Hey everybody, it's Gauntlet and welcome back to some more Magic the Gathering. Today we're going to be watching the new set debut for Phyrexia All Will Be One. This is the very exciting spoiler season. It's the very start of it, kind of the launch of a spoiler season. They've already been posting some completed Planeswalkers on Twitter, which is really cool to see some of those Phyrexianized Planeswalkers, but this is where we're really going to hear about a lot of the mechanics for the set and get just a ton of spoilers in general, so super exciting time. Phyrexia All Will Be One, of course, is the next standard legal mainline set. It's coming to Arena, it's coming to Paper. It's affecting every single format. So it's the next major set for Magic the Gathering. So very big, very important time for Magic the Gathering players, and I am super pumped about this. So without further ado, let's see what they've got in store for us with Phyrexia All Will Be One. The set symbol's very sick.
Lady Danger from the Command
The
Zone
font that they chose or created for Phyrexia there with the Phyrexian symbol as the eye, tremendously cool. The artwork is absolutely killer as always in Magic, but seeing the artwork of Miradan, this plane just created of just metal and steel mixing with all the freaky like living metal organic kind of life forms from Phyrexia is super sweet. Very nice. We've got the allied colored fast lands coming to Arena and Standard now, which is very good because now these are going to be legal in Explorer, they're going to be legal in Historic. These are very important lands for all the constructed formats in general. So very nice to get these to add to our collection alongside the Kaladesh Fastlands. Those were the enemy colored versions that did the same thing. So very nice choice of reprints here for the set. I believe this was leaked. I saw Saffron Olive tweeting about this, so I already kind of had an idea that they would probably be in there. But very nice reprints nonetheless. That is the one big bummer here that I do want to bring up. A lot of the set has been leaked. I have not seeked out any leaks, but if somebody was randomly talking about them on Twitter and I was just scrolling by and I saw it, then it is what it is. So the vast majority of the leaks I would say I don't know about, but I did know about this one. I did know about the return of the allied Fastlands. Alright, first spoiler, Black Sun's Twilight, a black and X for an instant. Up to one target creature gets -X till end of turn, and if it's 5 or more, return a creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Limited Mega Bomb right there. That's going to be, what, 6 mana, remove any creature on the board, bring back pretty much any creature from your grave. Anytime you can play a creature and a removal spell at the same time, you're going to have a very good time in Limited. That's a huge 2-for-1 with two of the most important card types. Getting a creature on the board, getting a creature of your opponent's off the board. Busted card. It's instant speed as well. This is going to be an A+ or S tier draft pick for certain. Alright, next up, White Sun's Twilight. Double white and X for a sorcery. You gain X life, create X 1/1s with Toxic, and this creature can't block. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. 7 mana, but 7 mana to wipe the board, gain 5 life, and get 5 1/1s that put a poison counter on your opponent when they hit them. It's pretty good. This one, I don't think it's actually quite as good as the black one, honestly, because the black one's more flexible. If you're stuck on mana, if you're really getting aggroed out and you can't make it to 6 mana, you can still use the black one as a pretty great removal spell to stay into the game. And this one's also more expensive to get that ability at its sorcery speed, so you got to get 7 mana to get the huge impact, whereas with the black one at 6 mana you're starting to get incredible impact even at instant speed. So this one's still a busted card, definitely a pretty high pick, probably B+, A tier, but not quite on par with the Black Sun's Twilight for draft or for Limited at least. Sealed is probably going to be slow enough where this is just an absolute house every time. But I could definitely, there's been recent draft formats that have been fast enough where a 7 mana board wipe, while still being good, not like the scariest bomb rare ever. Oh, now's a good time to talk about the Toxic mechanic as well, because this is the first card we've seen with that. It says they get to choose a number, and then whenever players are dealt combat damage by a creature with Toxic, they get that many poison counters. So a creature with Toxic 1 puts 1 poison counter on the player. Creature with Toxic 2 puts 2 poison counters on the player. That's very similar to Poisonous. I don't know what the difference is. I'd have to look it up. but I'm pretty sure poisonous was the same. It's just whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. Yeah, so it's basically just fixed infect. It's infect, but you can't use combat tricks to go crazy. So a little sad for like infect modern players or whatever. You're probably not going to get any new tools in the set unless there's some really aggressively costed toxic cards. But all in all, it's probably a good thing that we don't get a bunch more infect cards, because those can be so easily busted for constructed formats, for like the standard format, for commander as well. A lot of people really don't like poison stuff going on. It's probably a lot easier to balance a mechanic like toxic, where it's guaranteed you're only getting the set amount of poison counters. If you've never played with poison before, if somebody gets 10 poison counters, they just lose the game. So infect was this creature deals damage to players in the form of poison counters. So if you played a 1-mana 1/1 like Listener Elf, and then you attacked with it, and your opponent didn't block, you could do all kinds of stuff, like play a giant growth to give it +3/+3. There were even free combat tricks like Invigorate, where you would let your opponent gain 4 life to cast it for free, and then you'd give it like +4/+4. So just with combat tricks, it was really, really easy to just use some combat tricks to make your infect creature do 10 poison damage in like 2 swings maximum. So it's just really hard to balance that for standard and other constructed formats. So we get the nerfed infect, the infect that's much easier to balance, much harder to do crazy things with. Now you can still proliferate those poison counters and do stuff like that. And we do know that proliferate is coming back in the set. During the art reveals for the set, they showed artwork for Thrumming Bird as a reprint coming to the set, which was a 1/1 flyer that did proliferate every time it hit your opponent. Proliferate lets you put another counter on everything that has a counter on it if you want to. So basically just add a counter everywhere that you want to, including to players, so you can proliferate up those poison counters. So there's still going to be fun ways to use them. You can definitely beat some people with poison, but certainly a lot more balanced than infect. And I think it's probably for the best. Probably for the best to see toxic instead of infect here.
Impressive.
White Phyrexian cards are so interesting artistically, because they're just like beautiful and just disturbing at the same time, with those just porcelain like ivory white tones with just the blood red. Looks like a gooey kind of interior, you know. Oh, here's Elesh Norn. She was spoiled a while ago, but an incredible card, giving you Panharmonicon and shutting off your opponent's enter the battlefield effects. But this was the card that they spoiled back in December for us to keep waiting over the winter season. But yeah, incredible commander, ridiculously powerful body as well. 5 mana for a 4/7 vigilance. That's already just good in draft. She's not like an S tier bomb in draft if there's not a lot of good enter the battlefield effects in this format. But a 5 mana 4/7 vigilance is still a very high pick. That's just a ridiculously large body for a cheap mana cost. Again, I'm primarily a drafter, sometimes a commander player or a brawl player, so most of my assessments of cards are going to be limited focused, where, I mean, she's good, probably, you know, B+, just sturdy body. If there's a ton of great entered battlefield effects, that does change her value a lot, where being able to double up yours and shut off your opponents is really nasty. I can't get over how adorable Kaito's little robot Tanuki is every time.
Are literally tearing through the composition.
Just jumping in there.
Eternal Wonder is
It's very cool and very good to see that Kaito and the Eternal Wanderer are not Phyrexianized.
She makes quick,
because they were some really cool characters from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
This is easy.
Well, as always, full art basic lands in the new set, and they are completely gorgeous. I already love Miradan's like metallic art style, but again, mixed with the Phyrexian stuff, it's super cool. I love the spider swamp is really kind of adorable as well. This Plains is great for Phyrexian fans and Elesh Norn fans with that huge Phyrexian symbol in the back. I like that they all have the Phyrexian symbol. This forest here, it's kind of curved here. The swamp, it's obviously like the abdomen of the spider, and then the island, it's over here with the sun. With the mountain, it's got the spire and then the red sun behind it. Really cool to have like these hidden kind of Phyrexian symbols in some of them, and then, you know, the really obvious one in like the plains. The island, I think, is the coolest one to me because it reminds me the most of classic Miradan, with all the, you know, metallic spires and curved kind of stuff going around, these floating orbs. you can definitely tell that this is a Phyrexianized Miradan, and it's not just a Phyrexian plane that's entirely just Phyrexia at its core. So really cool to see, you know, Miradan kind of rising up from below there with these. Reminds me of like Glimmer Post, Cloud Post, those kind of locust lands. Really beautiful artwork. There's not a ton to say here. They've been beautiful in every set. I do like the added mana symbol at the bottom left. That's pretty cool. If they start doing that going forward on the full arts. Oh my god, okay. So these are the full Phyrexian basics where they are in just Phyrexian text. They look like the they look like that one secret layer that was all like metal themed basic lands. Where it was just like black and white and it had like the skull symbol and stuff like that. They look a lot like that. But yeah, very cool art style. Oh, there's like even a giant skull on the plains. The plains of all things has a skull up top, a little skull down here. Very, very swamp looking plains there. Yeah, they kind of all have skulls. The mountain here, rib cages on the swamp, skeleton creatures on the left and right of the swamp. That's so sick. That's so sick. The basics are just, they're doing an incredible job giving us multiple incredible full art basics in so many of the recent sets. Yeah, I'm so happy that they started doing basics with every set because it's always an absolute treat to see what they do with them each time. My favorites are the ones that are more in lore, so I like the other basics more, the ones that are just, this is what the plane looks like. But the alternate art styles here for the Phyrexianized basic lands, they're also really sweet artistically. They're just not my cup of tea for what I do with my land types. So absolutely killer showcase card styles here.
Art style of ink wash painting, which ink wash art style is so expressive.
That's a pretty sweet showcase style.
And simple, and it's about the essence of something and not about making a picture perfect image. It's about more the feeling of what you're trying to capture.
A new Azuri, let's go. Azuri is kind of a classic. Very, very nice commander back from the enemy colored commander pairs they did for the commander decks one time. So 2, a green and a blue for a 3/3 Phyrexian Elf Warrior. Whenever Azuri enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 if you do proliferate twice, and whenever you proliferate, draw a card. So you have to have 7 mana, but if you spend 7 mana, you get a 3/3 on the board, you proliferate twice, and you draw 2 cards. That's a very fun build around. This card is going to require a lot of context of what else is going on in the format and how efficient the other proliferate cards are to know how good this is going to be. But this looks like a B+ build around kind of card. I'm assuming green blue are the most proliferating colors. Going to be a very fun build around that I'm going to try for sure. Having that worst case scenario backup plan, if there's some good ramp in the format of just 7 mana 3/3 draw 2 is super nice. But yeah, especially if you've got some good places to put counters with the proliferate effect, and if you have other ways to proliferate, this could be a real nice card draw engine. So that's pretty sweet. That's a very fun, very cool card.
About like things that are elvish.
Obviously,
like
for commander, having a proliferate dedicated commander is super cool.
And having these big slashes.
And the showcase style looking incredible.
To giving that emotional feeling of horror and like brutality as opposed to like soft nature.
Geth, Thane of Contracts, a 3 mana 3/4 legendary Phyrexian zombie. Other creatures you control get -1/-1. Alright, I do not like that. 3 mana, tap, return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains, if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Activate only as a sorcery. That's a super interesting card. So it gives you that downside of making all of your own creatures smaller, but it gives you an incredibly powerful activated ability to just keep bringing things back from grave. This is probably pretty dang powerful. This seems super powerful to me, especially if there's any self-mill going on in the set. If there's any self-mill in the set, if there's any good sacrifice effects on creatures, or just nice, cheap, expendable creatures, you obviously want to draft around this a little bit, make sure you don't have any 1 toughness cards, but overall, I think that that's probably worth it to have an activated ability that powerful to give your board -1/-1. So, cool card, especially if you have like great enter the battlefield effects on creatures and stuff where they don't need to be that big to get value.
Flavio Giron.
We focused in a little bit more
And again,
on the face, I think, to
tremendously
get at
cool
that
alternate
more
art
natural
style. The
element a
Iker
little bit.
showcase
Then
art
there's the
style.
allowance for a lot of like
I
brutality.
like this one a lot. The concept Praetor artwork, where it's like almost just cartoonish, but it's still very like eerie, you know? Like it looks almost like, you know, with the proportions and with like the rib cages going on and stuff, it looks very like cartoony, almost like Spider-Man villainy kind of stuff going on there. I don't know. I don't know why, but I find that really cool. These kind of bold, dark edges on the card style. Yeah, that's super cool. All of the art styles are incredible on this. So they're showing off the mechanics now, going over the toxic mechanic. We already talked about it a little bit, but it's a very cool mechanic. Good way to balance the infect so that it is not as terrifying for constructed formats and for limited. But this is still a terrifying card. 7 mana, 6/7, can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. If it had no other text, that's already a solid potential finisher there. A big 6/7 that cannot be chump blocked easily. And when you slap Toxic 6 onto it, that is gonna be pretty terrifying when it hits the board. And your opponent's like, oh my god, I already have 4 poison counters? Or if they just have 3 and they just don't want to be dead to like 1 proliferate spell, it's a very cool, pretty solid uncommon there. Very, very nice card, probably like a B. Alright, so they've got some cards with corrupted abilities to give you a benefit for starting to poison your opponent, even if you haven't gotten them to 10 to win the game. Giving them a little bit of poison is going to trigger these cards like this, let them have the ability to also get an added bonus, start giving your 1/1s +2/+1 and stuff like that. So you're opening up more mechanics, more abilities on your cards by starting to poison your opponents. That is a very, very cool mechanic.
There are all kinds of corrupted abilities.
Skrrells Hive, it's going to be a fixed Bitter Blossom, it looks like. You get to create 1/1 Phyrexian Mites and lose a life every turn. They have Toxic, which is pretty scary, but this does have a major downside over Bitter Blossom, which is that those creatures can't block. So I don't think Skrrells Hive is actually going to be that good in constructed. Probably still a pretty decent limited card. Does feel quite risky though, making creatures that can't block. They're just 1/1s. They do have that Toxic though, so if you're a dedicated Toxic deck, dedicated to trying to get a lot of poison counters on your opponent, can still be scary. And then if you manage to get those poison counters on your opponent, giving all those 1/1s lifelink can help you start getting that life back. But the real power of Bitter Blossom, of course, was that you're getting a 1/1 flyer every turn. You're losing a life every turn, sure, but just chump blocking with those 1/1 flyers is like gaining you all the life back that you were paying. So the fact that these can't block is a huge downside to this card that makes it infinitely worse than Bitter Blossom. But still an interesting, probably decent card. Alright, so here's the next mechanic of the set. It's going to be oil counters, which basically work like charge counters. So we have Skrrells Forge, a red and 2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put an oil counter on it, then create an X1 with trample and haste, where X is the number of oil counters on it. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So the idea behind this card is the turn you play it, you get a 1/1 trample haste, and then sacrifice it. Next turn, a 2/1 trample haste, sacrifice it. Next turn, a 3/1 trample haste, sacrifice it. But there's going to be other cards in the set that can put oil counters onto other cards, move your oil counters around, and of course the proliferate mechanic is the big goal here. When you have a lot of oil counter stuff, you get to proliferate your oil counters up, you get to proliferate your poison counters on your opponent, you get to proliferate a lot of stuff, you know, charge counters on your plane, or loyalty counters on your planeswalkers. So proliferate's going to be sweet stuff in this set. And Skrrells Forge looks like a very fun card for aggressive decks. Doesn't help you block at all, but it is going to keep chipping in for some damage to your opponent, getting scarier and scarier as the game goes on. So if you've got some good ways to proliferate onto this, get some more oil counters, you can be threatening a lot of damage real quickly. Alright, so the resistance against Phyrexia's mechanic in the set, the Miradan mechanic, is for Miradan. When the equipment enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 red rebel creature token and attach it to this. So this is another one of these kind of equipment abilities where the equipment comes with a creature. That way you don't get that downside of having to just play an equipment, have it sit there a little bit, and then start moving it around. When you add a creature to these equipment, you're getting a creature. Instead of an equipment, you're more focused on, all right, I'm playing a decent creature here, and then when that creature dies, I kind of still have this equipment left behind to move around. So I think pretty powerful mechanic for limited. I'm pretty sure almost all the Miradan cards are going to be quite solid when they come with a 2/2 Rebel attached to the equipment. So this Blade of Shared Souls is a really interesting way to use that mechanic, because the way that it reads is that when this equipment becomes attached to a creature, you can make that creature become a copy of any other creature you control for as long as it's equipped. So essentially, when you cast this, you're spending 3 mana to clone one of your other creatures, because you can have that 2/2 Red Rebel just be a copy of anything else on your board as long as the blade is equipped to it. So a 3 mana clone of another one of your creatures that then leaves behind the equipment, so you can, equip your 1/1, make it a copy of your 6/6 or something like that, is super sweet. Yeah, it's like a better version of Mirror Image, the old uncommon that was a 3 mana clone of something you control, so very sweet card. Skrrells Defector Might, a 1 mana 1/1 with Toxic. It can't block, but still 1 mana 1/1 Toxic, get those poison counters going. For 1 Phyrexian white mana, so you can pay 1 white or 2 life, you can tap it and choose a color. Another creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn. Can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. That's super sweet. So it's going to help you get more toxic damage in by, if your opponent has nothing but like blue creatures to block with, you're just going to be like, okay, I'll give this creature toxic and say that it can't be blocked by blue creatures, keep getting some more poison. This is going to be a really nice cheap build around for the toxic decks, the poisonous decks. Yeah, this is going to be a really scary card. If you're on the play, just turn 1 Skrrell. Your opponent probably doesn't have a 1 mana creature. They're already kind of guaranteed to get 1 poison counter. If they don't have a creature early game, they maybe get a couple more from Skrrell, and then Skrrell has the activated ability to make it easier to get in for more poison counters late game. I'm really into Skrrell here. I'm going to draft around this card early on. A new Glissa for the new set. 1 a black and a green for a 3/3 first strike Death Toucher. Already an incredible limited card. It doesn't need any more text. That's a 3 mana 3/3 that wins every combat against any other creature, because it first strikes away their creature, because you're dealing, even if you do 1 first strike death touch damage, you can kill an 8/8 with that before it gets to deal any damage to Glissa. So already exceptional, but also whenever Glissa deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card and lose a life, or destroy an enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from a permanent. So getting rid of those oil counters or something like that to slow their stuff down, or getting rid of 3 loyalty counters from a planeswalker. Heyo, Glissa's a busted card in draft, in limited, in general. This is an A+ or S tier card again. Incredible bomb. A new Malira here. Malira, of course, was the classic card that was all anti-infect before. She was a combo piece as well, because you couldn't put -1/-1 counters on your creatures. So if you had Malira and a persist card, it would come back to the board without a -1/-1 counter, meaning it would just keep persisting forever. So here's the new Malira. 2 mana for a 3/3. That's already a Watch Wolf. That's already good for limited. If you're in green and white, a 2 mana 3/3, all right, go ahead. And also, if you would get 1 or more poison counters, instead you get 1 poison counter and can't get additional counters this turn. So if somebody attacks you with a toxic 6 creature and hits you, you take all the combat damage like normal, but you only get 1 poison counter. And then there's no proliferating shenanigans, no more poison counters from any other spells or anything like that. Another very nice anti-poison, anti-infect kind of card. You can also exile Malira, choose a creature or artifact. When it's put into the graveyard this turn, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. All right, yeah, this is an excellent card. 2 mana 3/3 that gives you just main deck poison hate, and it also lets you exile her when one of your bigger cards is going to die and just bring that back instead. So say you play her early game, you play the big, I don't know, the big like 7 mana 5/6 poisonous 6 or whatever thing, or 6/7 poisonous 6 or whatever it was. And then your opponent uses a removal spell on that. You can just be like, okay, well, my Malira is not as big as this, so I'll exile Malira. When you kill that card, I'll put that card back onto the board instead. So Malira is super sweet. A 2 mana 3/3 that then you can bank into protecting a bigger card later, even if the poison part doesn't do anything. That's a super sweet card, probably B+. Okay, well, this is a mythic rare Phyrexian horror, so it's probably ridiculous. Mondrak Glory Dominus, a 4 mana 4/4 legendary Phyrexian horror. If 1 or more tokens would be created under control, twice that many are created instead. Well, this is going to be a $1,000 card for Commander players, I can tell you that already. It is, it's Parallel Lives on a Stick. What's the white version? I forgot. There's a white version of this that's a white and 3. You double out the tokens that you place, basically. That was from Amonkhet. I can't believe I forgot its name. But yeah, this is that, except it's also a creature. And it's also a potential commander. So obviously in this set, you're going to be using that with mites. So you're doubling up all of your little 1/1 toxic 1 cards. So you can really go wide. So even if your opponent has like 3 blockers or something, maybe you get to a position where they've already taken some early poison. Maybe they're at like 6 poison counters. And then if you just have 4 more little 1/1s with toxic, then they have blockers. Just go really wide and attack in. You also have the ability to spend 3 mana. That, of course, can be paid for with life with the Phyrexian symbols there. Sacrifice 2 other artifacts or creatures. Put an indestructible counter on Mondrak. So you can even protect Mondrak by sacrificing some of your tokens. That's going to be a super sweet card for Commander. And a pretty good one for draft as well. Just a 4 mana 4/4 with pretty big upside if you draft a lot of might cards. Cool stuff. All right, so these are all the kind of completed planeswalkers that they were showing off on Twitter over the coming days, or over the previous days, as they led up to this event. And they're, of course, all mythic rare planeswalkers. They're all tremendously powerful cards and limited. I don't really need to say much about them. The main thing that's interesting about them is a lot of them are really flexible because of the completed mechanic, where you can pay some life for them to play a smaller version of them, get them on the board a little sooner. But yeah, I mean, all of these are just going to be busted. Just absolutely busted and limited. And super cool build-around cards for Constructed. I think lore-wise is probably the most interesting thing for me, because obviously gameplay-wise, they're self-explanatory. They're all busted cards. But lore-wise, Vraska and Nissa being completed is huge if they don't do the whole thing. This is what I expected them to do ever since Ajani got completed. I expect they're going to do some weird thing where after the war, everybody that was completed is just going to be fine. You know, like they're all going to be cured of the zombie disease or whatever, but like that would be kind of weird because the way that Phyrexians work, like there's a lot of really freaky stuff where it looks like their insides are out and Nahiri's like lost her arms, they're now swords, you know? Like even if they somehow found like a perfect cure or something, there's no like time travel involved or anything, these people should be like permanently scarred from this, at the very least. And some of them, I don't think they would be able to survive even if they weren't Phyrexian anymore, you know? So I'm getting worried now. I'm getting a little worried. I personally, I don't have a massive attachment, like a massive emotional attachment to any of the characters in the story or anything, so I wouldn't be like really sad if they all die, or really sad if they don't. I just think it's interesting because I have no idea what's going to happen now. I was like certain when Ajani got completed, I was going to be like, okay, they're just going to complete a bunch of planeswalkers like Tamio and Ajani, and then we'll just get them back after the Phyrexian War. But I don't know, I'm getting a little less certain now, but I guess I should probably be getting more certain because now they're completing planeswalkers like Vraska and Nissa as well, which are incredibly big fan favorites. But they've also been saying all this stuff about how March of the Machines is going to like change the future of Magic like greatly, gameplay wise and lore wise. So maybe they're just, I mean, if you've seen the professor's video, that's his big prediction, is that they're going to like try to get rid of just the planeswalker card type in general and try to focus more on legendary creatures. And maybe part of that is, if they're getting rid of planeswalkers anyway, have this big massive event in the war where all these beloved planeswalkers just straight up die. That would be insane. I have no idea what's going to happen in the best way possible. All right, the Jace has not been spoiled yet. Another card that's just definitely a bomb in limited. Shuts off some creatures, lets people mill cards, and draws cards. Okay, never mind. This isn't that good in limited. Still probably a pretty high pick, but this actually seems tremendously weak. Oh no. Oh no. Never mind. Never mind. I just read the third ability. So the first two abilities, like the first one's not that good at protecting itself, a +1 to give -3/-0, it's fine. And then the -2 to draw 1 card most of the time and mill somebody 3, not that good. Obviously, once a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, it's a great mill card. This definitely feels like a very constructed mill build around Planeswalker until you get to the -X, and then you're like, oh snap. Oh, snap. In limited, the worst case scenario for this card is you spend 4 mana and mill your opponent 15. That's terrifying. Sometimes you get to play a 2-drop creature into a 3-drop creature into playing Jace and then using the +1, and then milling your opponent like 18 the turn after that instead. Milling somebody like 20 cards is enough to win a lot of limited games, and it's not going to be too hard to pull that off with Jace the Perfected Mind, so never mind. Much like all the other Planeswalkers, very powerful card for limited. Does require a little bit of work though, making sure you have some defenses to plus Jace a little bit before you mill your opponent out. Oh yeah, by the way, this is now Jace completed. Jace, Nissa, and Vraska. Huge characters getting completed here. Phyrexian fans are just having a field day because now you have so many completed Planeswalkers. You can play a 5-color Phyrexian deck in Commander and have so many cool, flavorful cards, tons of Planeswalkers. This is a beautiful, beautiful set for people that love Phyrexian stuff.
The premiere of the official cinematic for All Will Be One.
All right, Phyrexia All Will Be One trailer. I hope this is great. This is a huge set, so it could be great. It could be as good as like the War of the Spark trailer if we're lucky. I mean, that was the best trailer ever, but let's see here. This is huge. This is a huge story moment. There's a lot of cool things they could do for the trailer. Hopefully it's a banger. They've even got the 30th anniversary symbol there. Come on, it's gotta be good. It's gotta be a good trailer.
Pain is the sign of your imperfection. The flaw at the center of all that you are.
Definitely freaky.
But your suffering is at an end. We offer you freedom from flesh. Your realms are diseased, and we are the only cure. You can either kneel before this throne or become a part of it. All will be one.
Oh, well, it's no War of the Spark trailer, but it was very, very cool artistically. Very, very interesting way to do it with the kind of the marble kind of statue versions of the characters and seeing them all like kind of shattered to the Phyrexians. Very cool trailer. Very cool trailer. Really cool artistically again. Not quite the War of the Spark trailer. It wasn't like big and emotional or anything. That's what I was like thinking maybe they could be doing because they have all of these. They have all these incredible characters people care a lot about, like Jace and Nissa and Vraska, that are getting completed and stuff, and Nahiri. So I thought maybe they could be doing some kind of War of the Spark sort of trailer with like seeing those characters like fighting and falling very directly, you know, of being like just resistance is futile, all will be one. These are your heroes and they're falling and becoming Phyrexian, but they went for something a much more like artistic and indirect with it, with like these marbly statue versions of characters rather than just like, you know, seeing the characters in flesh and blood actually like fighting it out, which is again a lot cooler, like cinematically more interesting artistically, but I don't think it's going to be like as big of a like, you know, wide audience trailer as that War of the Spark one was, because that kind of just very grounded emotional sort of story that the War of the Spark trailer hit was really really accessible to as wide a variety of people as possible, instead of the more, you know, avant-garde artistic stuff they're doing here. But yeah, very, very cool trailer. Don't think it's gonna be super massive, like I was thinking it could be. Anyways, I'm super pumped for the set. Set's looking really cool. We've got Toxic going on. We're going to be poisoning people. We're going to be proliferating those poison counters. We've got oil counters, potentially +1/+1 counters. We didn't see anything with +1/+1 counters yet. However, if they don't have a lot of creatures that have oil counters on the creatures, then I would assume they're probably going to do +1/+1 counters or -1/-1 counters as well. Because the only issue would be in paper Magic, it would be hard to keep track of a creature that has multiple +1/+1 counters and multiple oil counters or something like that on it. So unless oil counters is like a huge mechanic on creatures as well, we've only seen it on non-creature stuff so far, then I expect probably +1/+1s or -1/-1s to be good cards to proliferate. But yeah, everything that we know so far is very cool, with the poison counters, the proliferate mechanic, the little toxic mites, try to make a white go wide poison deck. That's such an interesting strategy, but if there was ever a set to give white infect and poison and stuff like that, it would be Phyrexia, all will be one. So cool stuff on the horizon, very pumped about the set. It's only a few weeks away now, so we are going to be drafting it, playing sealed of it very soon, but that's going to end today's video. And yeah, until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon for some more Magic the Gathering.